Hi, everybody. Welcome. People are still trickling in, so let's give everybody another minute or two while we wait to get started. Welcome, everyone. I'm hearing some echo. Okay, it's gone now. Thank you. So let's, I think people are transitioning from other meetings, trickling in. So we will get started in another minute.
Okay, thanks. Are you having cold or flu, Hazel?
Say that again?
Are you having cold or did you get flu?
No, it's just very early in the morning. My voice hasn't had any warm up yet. This is my warm up. So yeah. I'm sounding a little nasally, I guess. But yes, I am well, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's see. How many people do we have on now? Okay, we have 23 people. I think that's a good size. Maybe we can get started. Home, should we?
Yes, and
yes. Okay. Okay, great. So we can get started. We are recording, so for everybody who don't catch the beginning part, so we can start. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to the Engendering Data webinar. My name is Hazel Malapit. I'm a Senior Research Coordinator at IFPRI and co-lead of the Methods module of the Gender Impact Platform. So while we're waiting for everybody to get settled, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping reminders. So today's webinar, as you can see, is being recorded, and the recording will be available in the chat afterwards. Please keep your microphone muted throughout the presentation to avoid any background noise. And if you would like to ask a question, feel free to put them in the chat anytime during the presentation or use the hand raise function so that you can ask it verbally at the Q&A part of the presentation of the webinar. So as you may have seen from our invitation, this is actually the second webinar in a three-part series, which is highlighting the findings and lessons learned from studies conducted under the WEAI-Climate Learning Grants. These grants were awarded last year by the Gender Impact Platform under the Methods module. And you will recall that these learning grants are supporting 3 CGIAR research initiatives. We have Mitigate Plus, HER Plus, and Nexus Gains. And these grants are really supporting these initiatives to apply WEAI tools to climate change research. So we're aiming to better integrate women's empowerment and climate change into the CGIAR portfolio, strengthen capacity of researchers using WEAI tools in climate change studies, and inform the development of a climate add-on module for the pro-WEAI. So these projects at this stage have now collected the data, and as they are progressing and analyzing their data, we've invited the different project teams to share findings, lessons learned, and to gather feedback and insights from you all. So we had our first webinar in this series presented by Mitigate Plus team a couple of weeks ago. I think it was November 19th, if I'm not mistaken. Today, we have the second webinar in the series where we have the HER Plus team led by Home. They'll present their study entitled Women's Empowerment and Climate Change Resilience in Small livestock enterprises, learnings from the CGIAR Gender Equality Initiative in India. So let me briefly introduce our speakers for today. So first we have Hom Gartaula, who is leading this project. Hom is a senior scientist in gender and social research under the Sustainable Impact through Rice-Based Systems Department at ERIE, based in the Philippines. And then second, we have Harsha Jain, a senior consultant at Satva in India. Harsha's expertise is around developing designing, monitoring, evaluation, and learning frameworks, and conducting impact assessments. So you're all welcome to refer to their full bios along with the abstract of their study included in the calendar invite for this webinar. In terms of format, we have about 30 minutes for the presentation, 20 minutes for Q&A, and then we'll wrap up. And with that, we can get started. So let me give the floor to Hom to kick us off. Over to you, Hom.
Okay, thank you so much, Hazel, for this nice introduction. And I am joined by two key colleagues of this research, Prama and Dipali. We are three in the team. In this presentation, I'll give you context, a little background of the project, and Harsha will take us through the findings and of what we have observed in terms of climate learning and women's empowerment. Next slide, please. We'll talk about in this presentation, we'll talk about the context of FLW system. Now it has been coined as food, land, and water system amidst climate change, definitely. And we'll talk a little bit about the initiative that Heather just mentioned and the work package that we are focusing on. And we'll talk about what STIBs in terms of implementation in the learning labs and the research questions. And then we'll move on to the monitoring, evaluation, and learning framework and key findings. And we'll have some Q&A after we talk about the conclusion and what are the issues as we move forward. So next, please. Okay, so talking about the context, as we are heading into this unprecedented crisis of climate change that our food, land, and water systems are facing, and that is, on one hand, it has been like a challenging situation in terms of climate change, and further to that is social inequality, which increases vulnerability if we don't put enough measures into the prospective risk that we can mitigate. And then in CGIAR, we are working on several initiatives, research initiatives. Among them is the Gender Equality Initiative. In short, we call it HER+, which is Harnessing Equality and Resilience in the Food System. And this initiative will touch upon addressing the structural barriers to inequality, and hence we work in this 4 work packages. I'm not going into detail in that one, but in the next slide I'll talk about the Empower initiative. Next slide, please. Empower work package, that is what this project is built on. So if you know this agricultural innovation system, there are so many innovations, so many technologies that are developed, but many of them are not reaching out to farmers. Especially the uptake of those technologies and innovations is very low, especially among women and smallholder farmers. And also some of the approaches we have been practicing is focusing too much on the technical meritocracy of the technology that we work, which is basically not addressing the decision-making system of these farmers and how these technologies are taken up by these people, which include the social component, which include the cultural practices, which include the economic aspect and the policy framework that needs to be taken care of as we move on to adoption of this technology. So in this one, we work on building those innovations and technologies and address how the vulnerabilities of these women and smallholder farmers can be addressed through bundling or combining the social and technical innovations. So can you please go to next tab? Yes. So in this one, we basically identify, develop, and test the context-specific socio-technical innovation bundles, and we design and test different partnership, different models on how we could take these bundles in a package, which would include, which would enhance uptake of these climate smart STIBs, the socio-technical innovation bundles, and in the process, we are developing the toolbox. So next slide, please. So this was the basic context of what we are doing in this project, and talking about the socio-technical innovation bundle. So it is actually combining the social, technical and technological aspects of innovations in a systematic, context-specific, and gender-responsive manner. So that gives more inclusive environment, that gives more participating environment for the end users, which are women and marginal farmers. They can take those innovations as their own, and then it will improve the adoption of these technologies. Yeah, next slide, please. And we are implementing these bundles in what we call the stakeholder engagement and learning lab and learning hubs. We call them learning lab, which is kind of a common space where these different stakeholders, different actors can work together and build on the capacity they have, the resources they have, and the knowledge they have, and that will bring into more of the desirable and context-specific solution of the climate change risk and vulnerabilities that they're facing. Next slide, please. So in India, okay, so where we are doing this? In India, we are working in West Bengal and Odisha, 2 states, and we are a little bit in advanced stage in West Bengal, and we have started lately in Odisha. So in today's presentation, we'll be focusing more on West Bengal. Next slide, please. So as this STIBs is also in the process of building partnership of these local level stakeholders. So we are working with different NGOs, NGO, government, and even private sector partners. You can see the name of these different partners. We have ICAR, Indian Veterinary Institute, as a government entity. We have Sattva Consulting as an MEL partner. We have a presenter from this partner today, and we have Pradhan, we have Seva, we have Change Initiatives, and we have a university, Ramakrishna Mission University, as a knowledge partner. And we are working in 2 learning labs, one in North 24 Parganas and other one is in the South 24 Parganas. Next slide, please. And we are working in goat and poultry value chain in these 2 locations. So so as I mentioned, so this is a combination of social, technical, and technological packages of different innovations. So we are working in group mobilization, leadership training, and many other trainings, then sensitization, nutrition and hygiene, adult literacy, and business planning. We have categorized them into social innovations. And then technological innovations are basically providing the improved livestock germplasm. We are providing poultry, we are providing goat, and also we are providing fish processing units. And to know about them, like about vaccinations, about feed processing, we are also providing training related to that, and that is under the technical innovations. So next slide, please. So within this project, And as Hazel mentioned earlier, so this project is about the climate learning grant. So what are the issues that we have implemented to learn about women's empowerment and what are the changes we have been observing. So we started this MEL framework by asking, so to what extent and what combinations of STIBs contribute to women's empowerment among these livestock farmers in India? And the second is that how do these women empowerment lead to increased adoption of these climate smart technologies and build resilience in different socio-ecological contexts, and how effective the pro-WEAI tool and methods are to measure this women's empowerment in the context of climate actions and build resilience. So those are the research questions we have. Now, I'd request Harsha to take us through her insights around the M&E aspect and the key highlights of the pro-WEAI tool that we have developed to collect data. We have used to collect baseline data in this project. Over to you, Harsha.
Yes. Thank you so much, Home. Yeah, just to guide everyone through our approach in M&E, we have worked up until now. We have worked onto four aspects of M&E. We have developed the TOC for the West Bengal Learning Lab, which guides the initiative and highlights the pathways from activities to outcomes to the key intended impacts of the initiative. After that, we also developed a results-based management system, which ensures recurring or concurrent monitoring, understanding of progress, as well as ensuring accountability within the various learning lab partners that the initiative has. Moving on, we have collected or conducted a baseline study to establish benchmarks and also understand the current status of various aspects that the intervention aims to address. Beyond that, currently we are in the process of completing the progress and change assessments, which is being done through a qualitative assessment using the small wins framework to understand the small changes or small wins that the initiative has had up until now. Next slide, please. Yeah, as we all know that the focus for today would be to share learnings from our baseline study. In the baseline study, we focused on four components. One was the livestock, understanding the current context of livestock, both poultry as well as goats. The next was women's empowerment. We also worked to understand aspects of dietary diversity and also identify climate change and resilience indicators for these women farmers. Today's focus would be like the slide highlights women's empowerment and learnings from women's empowerment as well as usage of climate resilience frameworks. Next slide, please. Yes. So for the assessment was covered in a treatment and control fashion where we covered about. Yes. So we had about being inspired by the thumb rule, we aimed and targeted about 175 households in all arms of the study. However, due to field realities, we were able to cover about 693 participants, and the breakup is presented on the slide itself. Beyond that, beyond the quantitative data collection, we also went through qualitative data collection where we conducted focus group discussions with men, women, and community leaders to understand their perspectives on empowerment and various other aspects, components of the study. Next slide, please. Yeah, so here is the key finding from the study. If you can see the empowerment scores for the target and control groups of each location is mentioned. About 25% of women are currently empowered in the North 24 Parganas and 32% women are empowered in South 24 Parganas. Moving on, can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah, so to probe a little further on which are the indicators where you can see high adequacy, in North 24, we see that access to and decisions on financial services and group memberships achieved the highest adequacy, while in South, it was again access to and decisions on financial services and visiting important locations. Now, just to highlight the nuance and the context specificness of the tool as well. Now, say for instance, the parameter or the indicator of financial services, a woman can get adequacy here by owning a bank account as well. There are other parameters as well, but one of the options, one of the benchmarks that is there is to own bank account. Now in India, many women own bank account because most of the government schemes or access to those schemes are connected or linked to those bank accounts. So that that parameter reduces the strictness of this indicator, and thereby maybe that's why we see such high numbers of adequacy present in this indicator. So that context or that understanding is very important while looking at these numbers, and it should not be looked outside context is what we'd like to highlight here. Apart from that, group membership and visiting important locations both highlight stronger social networks and agencies among these women, which are considered essential for social capital as well as empowerment. So these are the parameters, these are the indicators which highlight highest adequacy. There are, of course, another example that I can highlight here is ownership of land and other assets. The quantitative data again shows decent ownership. However, when we moved ahead with qualitative probings, it was identified that any valuable asset is often still owned by men, or the perception as well that men should hold it, or by basis of uh, the heir, the assets should be moved to the heir, and that true heir is a man is still the perception that the community holds. So that these are nuances that maybe can be probed more through qualitative insights, and we have also gathered it through our qualitative insights only. And just to again highlight that the numbers shouldn't be looked alone, but in context with the qualitative information. Moving on, can we go to the next slide, please? These are the indicators, that's work balance, autonomy and income, self-efficacy, group membership, which are on the lower side in North 24 and South 24 Parganas. Again, shows these variations. Now, say for instance, group membership is high in North 24, but low in South 24. So these shows that there are various different indicators playing a role in empowering women. And again, the pro-WEAI tool allows us to look at it in across these various indicators and ensure that the interventions are more targeted towards improving empowerment through the arms where the particular community is lagging behind. So that's very useful information that the tool provides us by splitting empowerment across these 10 indicators. Another aspect that, like I already mentioned, is the usage of qualitative data, and the protocols that are again present on the IFPRI website has been quite helpful to understand the nuances, the restrictive conditions that the women face, and to look at these indicators in context of the communities that we are working with. The qualitative insights also gave us an understanding of what is the perception of empowerment or empowered man and women in these communities. It also showed us the restrictiveness the restrictive conditions that women have to face, more of those conditions, restrictive conditions that the women have to face as compared to when trying to achieve empowerment. Another key aspect that we found through those qualitative insights or data is that there is a difference between who's considered an empowered woman versus a respected woman, but those differences become a little blurred when it comes to men. And again, just highlights the societal norms or the perceptions that the community as a whole holds towards empowered women versus empowered men. So has been a very useful exercise for us to collect both quantitative and qualitative data here. Can we move on, please, to the next slide? Yes, so to highlight a few of the learnings, that have of course been a very enriching experience for the entire team. But to highlight a few of the learnings, one is key indicators for strengthening empowerment. It's very easy to understand what are the legs of empowerment that an intervention should focus on, because like I mentioned, the empowerment index has been broken across these 10 aspects. So has been a very useful exercise here. Enhanced insights through data integration, so combining quantitative and qualitative tools have been again very useful and has provided a richer understanding of empowerment overall for the initiative. um, Before going on field to collect data, we conducted a pilot data collection exercise as well with a couple of women to just test the tool to understand how the community takes on this extensive data collection exercise. And it turned out to be very useful to us to ensure we refine our approach while going on field to actually finally collect data. So again, something very valuable experience for us. And respondent consideration here, I'd like to again focus that the pro-WEAI tool is quite comprehensive, requires respondents to really deep dive and answer the questions. So adding any additional modules to the tool should be really carefully considered to avoid overburdening the respondents, because these are mostly daily wage workers dependent on everyday work, and each hour of their day counts. So again, being a little more considerate towards the respondents would be very useful according to our experience. Uh, Next slide, please. So that was about pro-WEAI. Coming to climate resilience, the approach that we used here was we tried to assess climate resilience across two layers. One is the women, the individual livestock rearers, as well as the community, because we understood that it can't be really separated out, and the community's condition, the community's capacity directly influences the women's capacity as well. So here, to calculate the individual level climate resilience, we created a project tailored index, and then we gave women a score of 3, and then their resilience was calculated basis that score, and they have been broken down into 4 quartiles. The score has been broken down into 4 quartiles, and the women have been categorized into those quartiles basis the score that they have achieved. The quartiles range from very low resilience to high resilience. Moving on to community level resilience assessment, that assessment has been done using the drift framework, and discussions have been identified for preventive capacity, anticipative capacity, absorptive, adaptive, and transformative capacity. The latter assessment of community resilience has been done primarily through qualitative and secondary literature. However, the individual score has been calculated using quantitative primary data. Moving on to the next slide. Yeah, here are the results that we have. This is particularly regarding the climate level, individual level resilience scores. Like we see about 70% women across the two groups fall under, before jumping into climate resilience, it was of course established the kind of risks or the extreme weather that these women or these communities face, and about over 70% of them highlighted that they are exposed to extreme weather events such as cyclones, untimely and excessive rainfall, floods, droughts, as well as extreme heat and cold. So that was established. After that is when we moved ahead and understood their resilience. And in this case, like we see about 86% in the treatment group and 80% in the treatment group of South 24 fall under the latter two groups, which is the very low resilience and the low resilience groups. And that definitely shouts out the need for interventions which can alleviate these women's the vulnerabilities that these women are facing and help them adapt to climate related shocks. Moving to the next slide. Similar understanding was derived for the community as well, as they were also, of course, highly vulnerable to these extreme events. Certain understanding at the community level helped us were in terms of their limited knowledge about disaster risk reductions. Although these plans exist at national and state and district levels, their implementation or their understanding or even awareness at the community level has been quite low. Their limited preparedness is another aspect to contribute to their vulnerability, insufficient infrastructure, both for households as well as livestock. Given that this project is focusing on livestock, it was identified that they are also highly vulnerable to climate effects. Financial strains during and after the disasters, worsening flooding caused due to poor infrastructure in terms of clogged canals, inadequate drainage systems were all contributing factors to their vulnerability to climate shocks or extreme weather events. Again, the insight is a reiteration that there is need for tailored interventions that address the specific barriers faced both by women livestock farmers, rearers, and their communities to help them build their resilience as well as adapt to such climate shocks and safeguard their livelihoods. So these have been the findings in terms of climate resilience. Moving on to the next slide. Yes, so some key learnings while developing this climate resilience score. There's definitely something that we found a little a gap in the literature was in terms of a specific tool that can help us guide with respect to resilience. Um, what we understood is resilience is a dynamic topic, and it has a dynamic nature. In fact, like we need to understand while even measuring resilience, we have to understand resilience to what, resilience of what, as well as resilience by when. And this demands a specific tailored tool. So while the tailored tool is required, there is need for some guidance and some an overall guiding document or guiding principles as well to help calculate those resilience. So that's definitely some gap that we have identified. So the tool should definitely be flexible, context specific, but as well as because it's important to adapt to the diverse nature of the projects, but at the same time some more guidance on this would be definitely welcomed. Another aspect is in terms of the linkages in terms of empowerment and resilience. This specifically came out when we were trying to talk about the resilience for the community level using the drift framework. So many of the indicators of pro-WEAI as well could be, if looked from a different angle, from a different perspective, could be integrated into that narrative. And that synergy is something that we found to be very valuable, and also scope for the indicators of pro-WEAI to be linked with resilience or climate resilience in this case. So definitely an area or an opportunity that we recognized. Moving on to the next slide. Yeah, so in conclusion to our assessment here, climate resilient measurement, there's definitely potential to develop tools that both are simple, effective and context specific to measure climate resilience. Integration of empowerment and resilience is, of course, again another opportunity as there are synergies between these two dimensions. We have seen programs coming together like this initiative by CGIAR, where empowerment as well as climate resilience is coming together. So, so there are definitely needs for tools also that look at these two dimensions in cohesion. ProVia is definitely a comprehensive tool. Kudos to the team for developing it, as well as giving such an elaborate guide for anyone to use it. Highly appreciated. It has been very effective in measuring women's empowerment. Both the quantitative and qualitative components should be utilized, is what we also highly recommend while approaching or while using the tool to ensure that the insights are richer. One definite suggestion from our end is also to link to more strongly link the qualitative aspects of the nature, that protocols that are mentioned to the indicators, to ensure that uh, given a chance or when there's need, the various indicators can be probed into much deeper in a more systematic way. So that's also something that we'd recommend to ensure that overall it's a more cohesive or yeah, tool. So that's from our end. I'll pass it on to Home to share if I've missed anything, or just share about how we can move forward from this.
Yes, thank you, Harsa, for taking us through the key insights that we gained from this baseline study, a mixed research design. We saw the value of combining the qualitative and quantitative insights in any research. And you have seen that this is sort of work in progress work. We are um, still working on it. We are planning to do further analysis to establish more relationships in terms of like how these bundles are sort of correlated with women's empowerment, climate resilience, and dietary diversity. We are working on that and produce more outputs out of those nuanced analysis. And you also have realized that these the climate change impact and also the issues of women's empowerment and resilience, they are not uh, they are not universal anymore. I mean, they're universal, but more context specific. So the impact is universal, but how it is impacted, how it impacts two different people, two different socio-cultural contexts, two different agroecological setting, they are entirely different things. So we are planning to expand this STIBs implementation to other sectors like rice fish farming, the integration of fish into rice, for example, or in other sectors and also other geographics, so that we can have more evidence to different combinations and see which combinations would better work in terms of building resilience, in terms of improving empowerment of the women involved. So that is another thing we want to work on as we move forward into the new portfolio that we are moving through. And the opportunity that we see, as you saw, that this is the report that we are presenting, the findings we are presenting today are the baseline. So we are looking at the potential and the opportunity for doing an end line probably in the next 1 or 2 years after implementing these interventions, and see more what differences these combinations of the bundles could make into the empowerment of this woman, but also building the resilience, but also increasing the implementation expands to other sectors, so that we can get more nuanced analysis from this. I think that is my last slide. Can you please move to the next, which is thanks a lot for your attention, and I just would like to acknowledge the Gender Impact Platform and the all trust fund contributors who could provide funding support to all these initiatives, including ours and this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Home and Harsha, for that excellent presentation. So I think we'll now move to let's move to our Q&A section. We have one question already in the chat from Desaline. I'm going to read it. Small livestock enterprises, how small are these enterprises? What is the criteria to categorize these into small? So maybe you can take that first. Very simple question.
Thank you, Desaline. So Harsha, I just add some point here, and then you can jump in if you like. So these are really landless and near landless farmers. So livestock enterprises is just enterprises by name. They have like a few poultry and 1 or 2 goat and a small pond for their everyday need of fish or like the drinking water for the livestock. And these are very small farmers. And also another criteria that we used was the government scheme, which is supporting the scheduled tribe and scheduled caste households in these 2 districts. And those are really very, very marginalized community. So if you ask me those are the criteria, and if you ask me the scale, they are very small farmers with very few poultry, few goat, and few other livestock, and very small, like less than an acre of land for their survival.
Okay. Thank you, Home. We have another question from Farha. She has a long question, so I've invited her. Farha, are you able to ask your question directly? Please unmute.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you
Please
hear
go
me?
ahead. Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, great. Hi. Thank you for the presentation, Home and Harsha. So what I wanted to ask you was, in one of the slides, you showed that the access to credit was extremely high, I think more than 90%. And we had this similar experience with another study in India and Bihar, because, there it's pretty much like universal with people owning bank account. So what we had done is we had laxed the criteria of owning bank account just to see whether how women fared when it came to the other criterias. And we saw that the adequacy changed drastically from 95% to like 60%. So I'm just wondering, have you done any similar exercise in your data just to see whether women actually had access to credit and how their decision making with related to credit was? Thanks.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot for us. So we have, and actually it's a good eye opener for us. We haven't done that analysis, but it makes a sense to us, and we'll consider that suggestion.
Yeah. The idea also is to
Yeah.
highlight, sorry, just to add on, the idea is also to highlight certain of these indicators or certain of these benchmarks in adequacy mentioned in the pro-WEAI tool are easy to meet given the context maybe. So that variation has been quite interesting for us to see how the tool maybe changes context in different locations as well. So thank you, Farah, for your suggestion, and definitely something for us to explore. But here we also want to highlight that, yeah, the strictness of the tool varies maybe given the context, and that has been an insight for us and something we wanted to present.
Yes, on this point, actually, I can add how you might do this. Of course, and this is actually not unique to this context. We've seen this before, where sometimes the thresholds in a particular context do not show variation because it's universal, everybody already has it. And what do you do in that case? So as Farha suggested, one option is to do a recalculation. I mean, of course, if you are planning to compare with other projects or other in a portfolio, you do want to use same thresholds across, right? So for comparisons. Now, internally in the project, what you can do is you calculate pro-WEAI as with the regular threshold. You can recalculate, making these adjustments. So for example, the financial access to finance indicator, you can exclude that, recalculate that, and then see, as Farha suggests, what happens. This is actually should be fairly simple to do now with the new ADO. This is a shameless plug, the WEAI ADO program, where you can just run a command, change the drop indicators, etc. So that should be a simple thing to check. And then the other option could be to look at sort of the breakdown of the components of that indicator and see what is really driving. Because sometimes I mean, I can't say because I haven't seen your data, but sometimes it's driven by just one aspect or not. And it's not, it's just that when we do these aggregations, we're aggregating the information. So you lose the nuance within. So that's actually a good signal to unpack that. So let's see where that variation is coming from. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Nasrin, please go ahead. You have your hand up.
Thank you for Homa and Harsha for their nice presentation. But I have a question regarding access to finance. I am talking from Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, many women have a bank account. There is no challenges for opening any bank account. But to reach the services or access to finance, they face huge challenges because there are system related challenges to get loan services. They need to provide some documents, especially the document of assets, valuable assets like land. But in Bangladesh, the ownership of land is to men basically. So though they have the bank account, but they can't access to finance. So how you measure these things, and what is your experience? I would like to learn from you actually. Thank you.
Okay. So more on access. Do you want to respond to this one, Harsha?
Home, do you want to
Or
take it up
Home?
or should I?
No, Harsha, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Uh, a very similar context between India and Bangladesh, not much difference. Like you said, uh, having a bank account is easy, but using those services is another conversation altogether. And in this case, we have relied upon qualitative insights to help us understanding of the contextual scenario to help us understand what really happens. But we have kept the sanctity of the tool as is to calculate the empowerment at this point, but definitely more to explore. And I mean, Hazel can Hazel can let us know how to take it forward from there. But like you already mentioned, breaking the components down, understanding where the variation is coming or not coming from, but at the same time using some qualitative insights would also be very helpful, I would say.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. And I think another issue, Hazel, is also the like we didn't want to mess with the tool, so we just tried to go as much as we could in terms of implementing that specific tools. And we have already published a blog and some of the
Yes.
challenges we faced. And there are some other issues too, like we can talk about more into how this could be kind of revised or think it through in a different way. For example, this is like account opening is a universal thing in some countries, while it is an access issue in others. So that is something, and there are some other issues as well. Okay, we can talk about that maybe in some other forum. Yeah.
Okay.
Eileen.
Yes. Before Eileen goes, I just wanted to say thanks for mentioning the blog. We will link that in the chat. There is that blog around the experience that this team has had in implementing pro-WEAI. Yes, Eileen, over to you.
Yeah. So Home and team, great presentation. Actually, I wanted to say that I think what we're also doing in Ethiopia, which would complement what Home and team have done in India, might address some of these issues. So what we've actually done is combine the climate indicators into what we already have for the pro-WEAI, and we're developing this Women Resilient Index. So that way it would actually show how you can bring those two concepts together. And I think the interesting bit is we are all working on socio-technical innovation bundles, but the different, of course, would just be the context. Where in India, you're looking more at livestock, and then in Ethiopia, we're looking more at vegetables. Then also, I think for Ethiopia, we were able to get like 1,600 and something. So I think what would be interesting is when we have that data ready as a team, also we can sit together and see, look at the challenges across, but also see with the diverse, but to a certain area, similar methodologies that we used. Can we be able to have something that we can propose to anyone, that is not only interested in empowerment, but literally also pulling together resilient models? Just to add that. Thanks. Hazel, back to you.
Thank you, Eileen. And since you touched on resilience, I think I did have a question on the individual resilience scores you talked about. You went through it very fast, so maybe I missed it. Can you say more about what is the components of that score and how you're measuring it?
Yes, Hafsa, please go ahead.
Sorry, I was missing the mic button. But basically, the components that we first we defined what resilience is for. In particularly for this project, we spoke about what resilience would mean for these livestock rearers. After that, we looked into three components, basically maintaining functionality, recovering from losses, as well as improving for the future. These are the three components, and then there were various proxy indicators added to these components. Basis then a scoring mechanism was used to lead to the resilience score, which came out of three, because the three main pillars that we used, like I mentioned, was maintaining functionality, recovering from losses, and improving for the future.
Okay, thank you. And there's a request for more information if there is a link to the methodology you use for calculating those resilience scores. I think that would be appreciated. We still have some more time, like at least 5 more minutes. Do we have any other questions from the group? I have more questions. Yes, Elizabeth, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks everyone for the great presentation. So it sounds like you think that for the purposes of measuring climate resilience, we need to do better about looking at, women's access to finance and not just opening a bank account. Are there other aspects that you think are important, like other aspects of women's agency that the pro-WEAI doesn't capture that you think are really important for climate resilience? For example, when Anna and her team presented on the Mitigate Plus work, the issues around collective agency were really important, given that a lot of adaptation happens at the community level. So sort of looking beyond the household and looking beyond sort of just the group membership questions seems to be really important. But are there other aspects that came out in your study that you think we should be focusing more on as we develop this add-on module? Just some initial reactions. I know we'll have more conversations on this later. Thanks.
Some some parameters that we used while discussing climate resilience for the community were ownership to land and assets, financial access like the bank account aspect, the aspect of group membership, because that defines your social capital as well, and that's of course necessary for resilience as well. So these are some of the indicators that I recall is definitely having a similarity between empowerment as well as resilience. But yeah, I think I would add to the list that the other team has already mentioned. I would add ownership to assets as well, being an important indicator. Another thing that I want to just reiterate is, like the team mentioned, resilience, we also feel goes beyond the individual. Home, please add on if you want. But the community's resilience is also important here, because the infrastructure at the community level is definitely going to determine the woman's resilience here. So maybe looking at it more at a broader level may be interesting at this point, I would say. But Home, please feel free to add.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth, for your question. Actually, we are working on what could be the elements, not only the questions that were asked directly as part of the resilience, climate resilience. Some of these things are also part of the empowerment. So we are still kind of going deeper into the analysis. So we're actually looking at the relationship between climate resilience and empowerment. So we can go into detail, but maybe in some other forum, because we are still working on and exactly how, like some of the things could be those assets, even the education, the access to information, those things were not directly considered under the resilience thing as we ask in general, but we are considering them in our analysis and see how that would like influence in the outcome. So that is something we're working on. Thanks, Elizabeth, for bringing this issue. And I just wanted to kind of appreciate Eileen's comment on taking some of these issues to the study that we are doing in Ethiopia, which is part of the same study. So there could also be the potential cross-learning opportunity when we have data from both the locations.
Right. So yes, so when you're the cross learning, I think is extremely important, and that's I think the advantage of using harmonized tools, right? Is you're able to do those cross analyses. Farha, you have your hand up. Would you like to come in?
Yes, just a very quick question. Because you have resilience score for the women and also empowerment score for the women, did you did you end up seeing any correlations between the both? Like, well, were more empowered women more resilient as well? Like, were those kind of patterns emerging from your analysis?
Yes, we are doing that. We are not yet there to get into the results of how these two domains are correlated, but we are doing the analysis. So that was, as I mentioned, in the moving forward, we are going into deeper analysis of how this combination, the STIBs will kind of relate to empowerment and to resilience. So that we are working on it. But we are not in a position to give you all those details at the moment, but we'll definitely get back to those insights very soon.
Sure. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, do we have any final burning questions from the group? Otherwise, while you're still thinking, maybe something will come up. I did have a couple of things to raise. One is that I was really struck by the differences in the proportion of empowered between treatment and control. And since you do mention that you plan to do an end line to measure impacts, um, I think that would, understanding very well, not just on the on the empowerment side, but even around other outcome indicators on dietary diversity resilience, how different are these samples between control? Because it looks like your treatment group is definitely less empowered. So that's just a question, for you to mull over as you continue your analysis. The other point I wanted to ask is around sequencing. This is, of course, we'd love it if everybody started doing more mixed methods work, and kudos to your team for doing this. I think we're learning from your experience. What can you say something about sequencing and how that played out in your project, and what would you recommend to others? Because this is always a question we get also. Do you want to do qual first before quant, or vice versa? If you had to do it again, what would be your preferred sequence?
Arsa would be the best person to talk about it, and I can add later. I'll add later if there's something I need to.
Uh, I think a classic question and a classic conundrum that people face. In this project's case, I would say what was very helpful was there was a lot of interactions with the community from various organizations or partners involved in this program beforehand as well, or there was some context and understanding that was present before. So that's why we chose to do qualitative after quantitative. In this piece, we did not want to miss out the pilot that we did before going ahead with the quantitative tool as well, because that proved out to be very, very essential to really just even understand that the community are they willing to go through this questionnaire? What do they understand by these various terms? Translation, how to translate the tool to ensure that they understand it correctly. So that piloting was important. After that is when we did quantitative. After that is when we did qualitative. We would recommend this process as long as there is some understanding of the community before you go through the data collection process. And in this case, because there was some situation assessments done, there was various teams that had tried to understand the community. We were not going blindsided into that community. So that, I think, proved to be very helpful for us. Home, please add on.
Yes, I think that's what we did. We're not blind enough to go with the protocol, but we knew a little bit already about the area. And in terms of sequencing, what we're saying, I have an anthropology background, so I have gone more qualitative first and identify what to quantify. But here, since we already know what we wanted to quantify, we went to the quantitative data collection first, so that we'll through the qualitative we'll get to know more nuances of those quantitative data that we have observed. So this is the sequence we adopt.
Excellent.
And also, yeah, Prama wants to add.
No, I just don't want it. I am here. but I'm not being visible. I'm part of the team.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and a qualitative researcher. So, I have also engaged with this entire process as a part of the team. And what Harsha said is actually key. It's not just about which sequence to follow, but we did not go there just to data collect. So that was the point. I mean, even though it was the qualitative later, the quantitative beginning, but we already had a long-term engagement, and we continue to have a long-term engagement with the community, which is why I think collecting data in the quantitative tool was easier. Having said that, we had written the blog just to inform that it wasn't that easy in spite of that. So that
Okay.
is the point. So while it is good to go for quantitative and then qualitative as we did this time, it is also good to have an engagement with the community before going for the quantitative data collection. That is the point I
Okay.
wanted to highlight.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And that's a great note to end on. We are out of time. So thank you so much, Hom, Harsha, and the rest of the team for that wonderful presentation, and to all of you for joining us today. Our reminder to please join us for the third and final webinar in this series. It's on December 10th. 8 a.m. Eastern Time, the Nexus Gains team will present their study. So you should be receiving an invite soon. Please watch out for that. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day. Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
everyone,
everyone. Thank you for
for
letting
your
me
Bye.
participation.
participate. Thank you.
Okay, bye.